Hello, Brave Masters. Welcome back to another amazing episode of the Brave Entrepreneur Podcast. I am your host, Jena Rodriguez, and I'm your transformational mentor and business growth strategist. And my heart is all about helping you get your brave on in the biggest possible way in your life, in your business, your relationships, whatever it is. I'm here to help you eradicate fear and step into your greatest potential. And that's what this show is all about. And it's also giving you insight into how these amazing guests, we have Susan Burrell today, and how they too have gotten their brave on in their life and business, etc. And I want to dive into that conversation right here, right now. So welcome, Susan. How are you?
Oh, I'm fabulous, Jena. And thank you for having me today. Because, and as you started talking about what you do, I just got chills, which is like my affirmation that I'm in the right place at the right time, speaking with somebody that I absolutely connect with. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel the same way. I'm so blessed to have met you. You are here with me in LA and one of my new friends in LA, right? And it's just been really great to have you on a part of my life already. And I was just on your show, which was amazing. And
It's so much fun.
I know. And I was like, okay, you have to be on mine. So we are cross-pollinating right there.
Yes, we are.
So
which I love.
I love that too. So please, please, please tell everyone real quick what your work in the world is all about.
Well, I work, I'm an intuitive healer and a spiritual guide. And I know that sounds like woo. People kind of step back and go, what? But really, I work with people that are in a place of deconstruction. They're stuck, they're lost, they don't know who they are. So I help them, the individuals, to develop more inner confidence and more self-love and self-respect. So then they can make the choices that are right for them, not just stumbling along doing what somebody else tells them to do.
Yeah. And do you find, because I know the answer, but I want to hear your answer. Do you find that there's a subtleness and sometimes invisible, kind of force about that, about actually knowing what's right for you? And it's like, I feel like people walk around and they believe that they're doing what's right for them, right? But what's really happening is they're so influenced by their spouse, their child, their boss,
media,
their media. Oh yeah, social media, the media. And so like actually hearing that voice of truth is really, really like subtle, and so what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I totally agree with you. It's my work, the work I do, and I would imagine the work that you do too on a entrepreneurial scale, is about getting people connected to that inner wisdom, that inner voice. I call it a divine spark, because we all got it. It doesn't matter what you look like or what you practice. We all got that divine spark that is here, that's within us, so we can find our inner brilliance, our inner wisdom, our inner truth, and live from that. But it takes, we were talking about this earlier, it takes the willingness to do the work, the willingness to go on that inner journey to really, excavate all the garbage, right, that we have piled on us, all of the stuff that we've said yes to from the time we were itty bitty, right? When we didn't know we had choice, when our family of origin said, you got to be like this, you got to do it this way. And, and then we go into school and well-meaning people tell us, you got to be like this, you got to do it this way. And by the time we are in our 20s, or at least in my generation, I didn't know who the heck I was. I was able to project an air of self-esteem, but I had zippo, none. And I didn't even realize I had no self-esteem. I mean, I didn't even own it or wake up to it until I was in my 50s and entered into divorce.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And when I was shattered, I mean, and that includes when I was in my early 30s, I became a type 1 diabetic. And I almost died. And talk about a wake-up call there, Jena. I was like, oh my God.
Even a type 1 at 30.
Yeah. And everybody's like, this doesn't happen. This doesn't, I said, well, it happened. So what are we going to do about it?
Yeah, exactly.
And I had to start giving myself insulin shots 3 to 5, 6 times a day, and test my blood and watch what I ate and make sure I exercised. And instead of allowing that to debilitate me, because there were support groups, for diabetics, and I'm so sorry, but so many people were just giving up on their lives. Oh, I've got a life-threatening disease, and I saw it as a gift. And we've talked about, I literally heard when I was in the hospital that this is just a test. This voice inside, this is just a test. It's not a lifelong thing. If I do my inner work and commit,
yes,
I will eventually become non-diabetic. Well, now it's been 28 years, I'm waiting, but but it was a gift to learn how to take care of myself, to, in some ways put myself first. When I had my son, and he would be crying, as an infant and needing attention and everything.
sure.
There were many times where I could not deal with him until I had to eat something, my blood sugar would be low. I would have to take care of myself. I saw steel magnolias once, and that was it. I didn't need to see it again. Right. Because I was living that life. So I was like, all right, got it. And so I became really good at dealing with my chronic life-threatening disease, to the point where people that meet me now don't even know. They don't get
Didn't know that.
they don't get it when all of a sudden I've got to stop and eat something. I've got to sit down, or I can't, and but when I went into, so you would think that there'd be some self-esteem development. What happened with that was I definitely went deeper into my spiritual quest, because I've been a spiritual quester from the time I was 18.
Yes.
And I was able to do some very, very deep work by meditating, by working affirmations that helped me to stay focused on being healthy and making choices that were best for me. But even then, it wasn't about even though the inner work was already occurring and I was clearing stuff, it wasn't what happened to me when I hit my 50s. And I don't know if it's my 50, people hitting their 50s, there's a whole another spectrum of, okay, what am I going to do with the second half of life? Because the first half I did what everybody else told me to.
Right.
I was a wife, I was a mother, I worked at some business, and when people hit their mid-life, right, there's this whole inner quest of, okay, who am I now? And how do I really want to be in the world? And so that's what happened when I hit divorces. Oh my God, first of all, I was shattered. But then I realized I could decide who I was. I didn't have anybody standing over me telling me what I was supposed to do or be or anything like that. And once I recognized a deeper awareness of my being at choice, then I realized I wanted to learn how to love myself and respect myself and stand up in the courage that I had, or the bravery, like you talk about, in that courage place that I had been emulating since I became diabetic. People would say, oh, you're so courageous, you're so strong. I'm like, I'm just living, this is what I got to do to be alive. But I got it when I was in divorce. Okay, this takes courage,
Right.
to develop my self-respect and my self-esteem, and recognize that I am valuable, and loving myself, right? Loving myself more than I ever had. That was an incredible journey that I really had to be strong in.
Yeah. And I'm curious, did you choose the divorce? I don't know your.
It was, my son was 18, about to graduate from high school. And it was just kind of apparent that our contract was done. Whatever that contract is that you make, there's definitely spiritual, energetic contracts we make with people, good or bad, right or wrong. And it was pretty clear. My ex-husband got the message first. And finally, I woke up in the middle of the night one night and recognized, okay, it's just done. It's just done. And then I went and filed for divorce.
Got it. Yeah, because I hear this almost every episode with my guests is because it reflects my life. It reflects what goes on for me, as well as I'm seeing it in others, right? And that is this difference between brave by survival and brave by choice, and so for me, it's the kind of that the hardships I went through, and everybody's like, oh, that was so brave. And I'm like, I can own that now. But when I was in it, I'm like, I have to, it's life threatening, right? Or it's, fight or flight.
Right.
So I think we can honor the moments where we are brave by survival, because all of it's brave. And I think we diminish what it takes someone to get out. So, because there's people that don't get out of the trauma, that don't get out of the hardship, that they stay in it because they're not, they're not coming up against that wall per se and choosing. There's still a choice, but it seems like we're pushed to the choice instead of we're pulled to the choice. That's the difference for me.
Yes.
And so I just kind of saw that and it's like, oh, well, I'm living this, it's like, so how is that courage, right? Or brave, when it comes to the diabetes. And yet my family has diabetes. Two of my family members. So I know, number one, it doesn't have to be, one of my family members has lived with it for 50 plus years.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not a death sentence if you take care of it. Right. Doesn't have to be.
Well, here's the other thing about when I became diabetic that I wasn't paying attention to. I was kind of doing a spiritual path, but I was not paying attention. And one of the major factors was I was 9 years into my marriage when I became diabetic. I was stressed out of my mind, and I ignored the inner knowledge and wisdom that said, this is not a healthy marriage for you.
Yeah.
I didn't listen. We both did our best to try and make it a good relationship. Actually, both of us did, it wasn't all his fault or all my fault, but I probably knew 3 years in to a 28-year marriage that it wasn't a good fit. But I had this, now maybe this is the ego, Jena, I don't know, but I had this, if I give my word, I keep it. I still have that. That's one of my honor systems, if I give my word, I keep it. And and maybe, hopefully I am the end of the old school of, if you give a vow of whatever, you have to honor it. Now, until the vow is, until you recognize. So this is what I'm going to say to everybody. Give your word and honor it. But there's also a place where you have to reevaluate and recheck in. And is this right for me now? It was right for me when I was 25, but at age 50 something, it wasn't right for me anymore.
Right. Well, and so what I just heard is, and something I've looked at, I've been, we're going to be married 18 years in December. And not to say it's been a straight line, at all. However, what I say to that is, I made a vow, but I don't have this, ball and chain feeling called, I don't have a choice.
Yeah.
So that, and then what I also see is that 28 years, 18 years, like and now that I'm more self-aware now than I was back then.
Yep.
I also know that a lot of times we get into relationships, ego to ego.
Yes.
Versus inner guidance, right? Or I call it true north, to true north. And then you build and grow and expand and have this relationship that tests you and grows you and stretches you and all those things, which mine has. But at times I think they become outdated because we were making the decision from a place of ego versus a place of higher self.
Yeah.
Right? And so because I am of the thought, everybody else here listening can try this on and agree or disagree. But you and me both, I think there is a point where we have to decide what is right for us now. Because we become new people every day. We become new people, certainly 28 years later, or 9 years later, or whatever it is. And I do feel like the beliefs and the conditioning and I've made a vow, so I have to stick to it till the day I die, I think is just a belief somebody landed. Now, there might be people that disagree. I get that. And I'm just stepping into what I feel is right for me. Right.
It's interesting. I've met a lot of people in their 70s and 80s over the last few years that have been married 40, 50, 60 years. My parents have been married 60 something years.
Wow.
They should have been divorced multiple times, and now here they are at the end of their lives, still committed to being together, Is it healthy? I can't say that it is. Has it been healthy? I can't say that it has. So I have a 25-year-old son, and he's involved in a very, very strong, happy relationship. And they start talking, when we get married down the line, right? When we get married. And I don't know how to guide them, because there's it would be lovely if you guys stayed together, and you need to have it open, be open-minded that if you guys change and grow in different directions, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I was taught that there's something wrong with that. If you can't make a marriage work, there's something wrong. And that's
a whole different conversation.
A whole different thing. And so what was interesting is I encouraged both of them to start working my book, Live an Empowered Life, a 30-day journey. And they both have dived into the work of the book. And which was astounding, 20 somethings, and they're both getting huge personal value, which I am knowing when they finish the journey of the book, they will both know themselves better. And then if they decide, right? Yeah. Then they have a better way of choosing. Okay, you are a good fit for me, or, maybe you're not, but whatever,
Yeah, whatever their plight is, right? We talked about that before we got on. And I think I love to say that it's like all of life and human experience is about finding our own understanding of it, right? And
that is so true.
Yeah. And it's like, so it's not for me to judge your choices. And vice versa. And of course, for me, judgment is simply a reflection of something incomplete in me, not them. And so whatever we decide, if you decide to own your vow and stay with it for 50, 60, 70, till the day you die, it's your choice. And be self-aware, take personal ownership. Do not be victim to it. Right. I'm a child of divorce. I'm a child of, after the divorce, my mom moves into a relationship that is 100% domestic violence. I mean, physically abusive to her, emotionally abusive to me, and alcoholic and drug addiction and all of that in the house, all that for 5 years. And do you stay in that? No. I don't think so. Again, my decision, my choice. And I think because obviously number one, abuse or alcohol to me is an ego. That's ego. And so his ego to her ego, that's utilizing codependency and not necessarily stepping into self-worth and self acceptance and things like that, whatever that was for her and whatever it was for him. Right.
Yes.
So as a child watching this, of course, I'm making my own conclusions and what's right and what's wrong or to me, and for me. And I've never ended up in any kind of relationship like that, like knock on wood, but I think my radar was on, that's when that feels like that doesn't work. Right.
Yes.
And so I would step out. The first boyfriend I ever had, I had to step out within a month because I was like, oop, nope, tendencies right there. And I was 15. I was 15 and I saw it.
You.
Yeah. I was
Good
like,
for
I
you.
was 15 and I saw it and I was like, I'm out. So, you know, I think our whole plight is about self-awareness. And I was going to bring back up your comment about like 50, you know, kind of, I think we talk, you know, yes, there's this conversation called midlife crisis or something like that. I think we're having a spiritual crisis, and I think it happens at different times of our lives. I
Yes.
just personally went through another one. I had one in my 20s. I had this like spiritual really up level. And then I've spent like, you know, the next 20 years. And then this last year I had the next level. So I think those are the crises. Those are the moments where we're getting like spiritually grounded or connected back to what, you know, the inner guidance and the, and we're wanting less separation, which is ego.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so, so no matter what age it is, I think it's a matter of like, and then I watch people that get to elderly, you know, and never really expand, you know, and that's just their journey, right? And so I know that, like, I'm very clear that you as well are in this space and in this world to be committed to our own self expansion. And then if we can give that back to our children and give that back to our, you know, the people around us in our communities, then you know, that's our calling at some level. So
Yeah.
number one, I congratulate you on that. And you know, going through that divorce, and it's like, so I didn't really know that you're like 3 years in, I knew, and yet you spend 28, right? It's
Yeah.
like, wow, you know. And I don't want to put words in
Go
your
ahead.
mouth. Do you feel a regret? Do you feel like that was the blessing that was necessary? How do you look at that
Oh, that's a good
for yourself?
question. Well, certainly when I filed for divorce and was going through that process
Sure.
that was very contentious and harmful to me, um, and I was doing my inner work. That's where, again, like you just said, there's different times where there is a spiritual crisis that kind of pulls you up, and you've got to sit down, right? You got to sit down and do the work. You can't
Yeah.
just keep walking around like a wounded. Some people do, but you can't. That wasn't for me. I knew I wanted to come out happier and healthier and free of my past. So while I was going through divorce, I did excavate there was tons of regret. Why did I stay? How stupid was I? Blah, 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 blah. All the negative self-talk, which was basically just more of the garbage I'd been living with, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so that's where I had to dig deeper and dig out the roots of those belief systems, if you will, right? And let them go, destroy them, burn them up, you know, so that I could see actually who am I now,
Mm-hmm.
right? And know myself, and not through somebody else's lens. You know, my husband at the time had a particular lens of who I was, and
Correct.
I made an unconscious agreement to be that,
Right.
right?
Right.
And instead of me. And so becoming more me, uh, so I've always been, we were talking about this earlier, Jenna. I've always been somebody that I just say what I think. and
I
and
love
so
about
when
you.
right and so when and usually it's not stuff that's harmful. I don't do that, but being an intuitive, stuff comes out of my mouth and I'm like, oh, what, you know, and people want to hear it or they don't want to hear it, or, you know,
Sure.
and 9 times out of 10, the stuff that comes out of my mouth is what needs to be heard, either by
Correct.
me or by the person I'm talking with.
Yeah, sure.
And so there's a place where when you are, okay, I'm just going to talk about me. Because I have made that inner commitment to be connected to myself, be connected to that divine spark within me, I am really attempting in this new year of my life to shine as brightly as I can. Because when I did before, somebody was always putting a cloak over me, you know, putting me in, you know, here, let's just hide that. No, turn it down, dim it. Where's the dimmer switch, you know? And I was like, what's wrong with me? There's something wrong with me. Why is there something
Right.
wrong with me?
Right.
And now I know there's nothing wrong with me. I am just fine. And it is okay if I get an intuitive hit and I feel like it needs to be spoken. It's okay,
Yeah.
because that's the truth of who I am. And if I want to be loud and feisty and, me,
A redhead.
a redhead, I'm gonna do that more often than not now.
Yeah.
And there still is that little, since you talk about ego, that little ego thread, that wants to pull me back or hide me in the side wings of the theater kind of thing. Here, come over here and be quiet.
Right.
But I'm really attempting to embrace that other part of me that really is me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can be as unique and as authentic and as compassionate and kind and loving as I have always been and I was meant to be. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get afraid of that,
Right.
afraid of shining so brightly that they're going to attract all the moths,
Yeah.
right?
Which we might, because
Yeah, I
they
know.
have something to resolve in themselves.
Yes.
I'm 100% with you. This has been one of my plights in my life, and I hit that kind of hyper awareness that I was dimming my light for the sake of others in 2013, and it was really impacting my marriage.
Oh dear.
It was like, I know I'm meant for something more, and then I was really afraid to go there, because what if I risk my marriage even? So it's
Yes.
like
Yes.
totally made up. He's
Yeah.
like actually very supportive, and yet I had to come through that and recognize it. And then even it was, I just told you the story. I won't go into too much detail before we got on, but that was the test. It was someone telling me to, tone it down and stop shining so bright, and not those exact words. But I was like, wow, so what healing do I need? And I found that in that experience, right?
Yeah.
And it's so funny. This morning I was talking to a friend, and it's something this year I'm hyper aware of, is the need for emotional divorce in
Oh.
ourselves. And so I talk a lot about emotional divorcing, and emotional divorcing of the ego,
Mm-hmm.
emotional divorcing of people.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes,
I've been
not
there,
always,
done that.
yeah, not always desired, but and if there's a new definition of that relationship, that's sometimes I think the case. Like, the dynamic has to be emotionally divorced from. I've gone through that this year. This year I did a physical emotional divorce called moved across the country, and
Uh-huh.
and it may sound very simple, called, yeah, sure, get in the car and move across to LA. And I'm like, oh no, but it brought up every emotional thing I had to face. Right. It was like, it was a rite of passage. Right.
Yeah.
And so I
Literally.
just, yeah, physically and emotionally and mentally. And so I just offer that, like, to everyone listening, like, what I hear you've gone through as well is those emotional divorces of self, of our identities, of our stories, of the people that don't serve us anymore, the seasons that just don't serve us anymore.
Yeah.
And however we can be brave in the face of that,
Yes.
then the gold and the magic and the authenticity and the true self, all of that's on the other side of it.
And the happiness, I will
And
say, and the
happiness.
happiness, the joy, the freedom to be who
Yes.
you are. And that's brilliant that you brought up emotional divorce, because after I divorced my ex-husband, I found I had to divorce a colleague. And all of a sudden I'm braver, I'm stronger. I'm like, I got to do this crap. Oh, and I did it.
I gotta make the
And
phone
then
call.
a few years later, I had to divorce my best friend of 30 plus years.
Yeah,
That was really hard.
that was brutal.
And then I had to emotionally divorce my parents, who are in their 85 and they live near me, and they have expectations that, as they get into the end game, I'm going to be there doing all the caregiving, and I'm not. I just am not.
Yeah.
My life, my turn, and they will have more than enough people helping them.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's hard, you know, it
Super
sounds
hard.
cold and callous, but in order for me to continue to love and respect myself, I had to set boundaries.
Yes.
And that's what the emotional divorce thing, for me at least, did, is here's
I'm
the
with you.
boundary. And if you keep crossing it, then we can no longer be in relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. And I completely relate to that. And it's almost with, um, for me, it's about loving myself
Mhm.
most, right?
Yes.
And not about not loving the other person, or not loving the parent, or the relationship, but it's about, wow, what does Jena want? What is right for Jena? And that, I think, I've not been asking that question until recently.
Oh,
And
yeah.
like,
That's a big
really,
question.
yeah. And then hearing it, and then and then committing to what that requires, to the
Yeah.
emotional divorces that it requires, the ownership that it requires, the responsibility that it requires.
Yes.
Like, that's the brave part, right? Because when you ask that question, you actually have, it's like there's an ownership to listening to the answer and doing something
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I see you have done. And
Yes, I have. And like we said earlier, it's an ongoing journey. It just is an ongoing journey. And there's always something to continue. And, not to be, whatever, raining on the parade here, but in order to continue to grow into ourselves and our potential, and in order to continue to love ourselves, it's
yes,
important to constantly to be vigilant in a way of when you're holding yourself back, when you're not listening to your inner voice. Like, you've got this shirt that's great. Hashtag gut and faith. I love it. But when we're not paying attention because life gets busy,
yeah,
then the universe will pull us up short and make us sit, right? Sit
yes,
down, take
100%.
a look, evaluate, who are you now? And those questions are so important. And then when you can answer, who am I now, there is that place of, okay, now I can own this.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I love that. And I know we talked about that vigilance, and I think that if we can anchor that for people, that this isn't like we've arrived, you and me,
Right,
this is
right,
like, no, we've just committed on a daily, minute by minute basis. That's it.
right. I
And
just
it's
keep
not
putting one
perfect.
foot in front of the other. And,
Like, just come
because,
with us. That's all we're
right,
saying.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because you know what? It's a lot more fun with more like-minded, consciously aware people, because as we move together, as we build together, as we uh, connect,
Yes.
we become those power changers that we keep waiting for, right? When Gandhi was around, he's like, be the change you want to see. Well, we all want to be that change, except that it takes work, and it
Exactly.
takes ongoing work.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Just join in the biggest class of life. Right? It is the master's degree.
That's right.
That's what we're up to, is getting that brave on. So this has been amazing. I mean, we talked probably 10 minutes before, and then we've gone on and on here, and I love it. I hope we can play again.
Absolutely.
I just really appreciate your message. I love the book that you've created, the story, and I know that you have come through so much in a brave way that allows people to reflect on their own life and their
Mm-hmm.
own possibility and
Mm-hmm.
their own capability.
Mm-hmm.
And so thank you for that. I send you a lot of good energy about the book and the success of it, and success in general.
Thank
And
you.
and so first and foremost, what's the best way for everyone to connect with you? What would that be?
Okay, so the best way to connect with me is through my website, susanburrell.com. And you can go on and see there's a whole bunch of other things besides my book, Live an Empowered Life, a 30-day journey. You can order it through the website or go to Amazon. But there's also, I have guided meditations. I have a podcast, Empowering Chats with Susan Burrell. There's a whole bunch of other things that I'm doing. So if you want to contact me, there's a little contact button, and you can write me a note, and we'll connect. But I really want to encourage people after our conversation, Jena, to, if you were asking who am I now, my book it's a workbook. So if you're ready to do the work, then Live an Empowered Life, a 30-day journey is the book for you. It's not a easy sit down read and maybe I'll get illuminated. It's a dig the stuff out, clean it up, and make your choices. And
love it.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to say about that is that it's a book that came out of all my inner work. So there's affirmations I wrote that are in the book to kind of prompt you. There's guided meditations you get asked to go to on the website. There's videos on my website that interact with the book so that you're not doing it by yourself. You know, I'm still there helping and supporting and all that stuff. So info@susanburrell.com. Can I talk about my cards for a minute?
I know. Yes. So please tell me about the cards.
Okay. So I have inspirational cards, a 52 deck. They're a companion piece to the book. And I would love to gift any of your listeners a deck of the cards. All they have to do is go to info@susanburrell, BURRELL.com.
Okay.
Let me know that you heard Jen and I talking.
Yes.
And then we'll send you a deck of cards. Just
wow.
I think everybody should have some.
I love empowerment cards, or I pull angel cards. I pull, or all of that, just to give me a message for the day. So I think that's amazing. So thank you for that gift.
You're welcome. May I read what I pulled before we started? Okay, because ever since my book came out, I decided it was time to do the work again with the affirmation cards, and I'm stunned. So this is what I pulled, which I just think supports you and I.
Okay.
Today, I stand at the edge of my life, filled with a divine loving energy, supporting me in all that I am and all that I do.
Love it.
Isn't that great? Yes. That's your gut, hashtag gut and faith.
Hashtag gut and faith. You can type this in. I love that. Thank you for that gift. That was amazing. And certainly the generosity of gifting that to my audience and everyone listening. So you're amazing. And I have one final question that I love asking at the very end. If this was your very last interview, your very last talk, your very last public forum, what would be the message you want to leave with the world?
Oh my God, chills. Oh my God, I hope I don't cry. That it is very important to love and respect yourself first. And once you do that, it's not selfish. It is kind and loving. And if we could all love and respect ourselves first, I think that we would see all the negative stuff like war and hatred and racism just fall away. Because if we can love ourselves, that's all that's needed.
I love it. Thank you. Yes. And that's the reaction I want. Chills and tears.
Great.
Because I know that's when you know it's right? That is what was meant to be said. So thank you so much for you and your gifts and the work that you're doing in the world. So stay strong, stay brave. And to everyone watching, let's go get our brave on. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jena.
You're welcome.